This enclosure is huge. I think it's bigger than my first apartment. Hi everyone, Greg here from the Laser channel where we learn, create, and share, and this enclosure is absolutely huge. This enclosure is from Longer and it's going to fit the Nano Pro along with the accessories of the Rotary attachment and the slide extension. This enclosure has a ton of really cool features that we'll be checking out in this video. First of all, when I'm running the enclosure, I no longer need to run the shroud on the laser, and this is going to save me a lot of time, especially when I go to change out the work material for the next project. I no longer have to work around that laser shroud. And when I'm using the rotary unit, especially when I'm engraving glass, when that blue laser diode hits glass, it throws off a huge amount of scatter light, meaning the operator and everybody else in that area needs to have safety glasses on, but with all the machinery inside of the laser enclosure, the safety glasses aren't needed anymore. When I take a tape measure, we're going to find that the internal dimension on here is going to be 28 inches wide, and this comes in at 14 inches deep, and the internal height is going to be 21 inches, making plenty of room for the machine, the accessories, and my elbows. I've cleared off the Nano Pro with the accessories, and in its place I put everything that is included with the enclosure. So come on a little bit closer and we'll check it out. The quick installation guide gives me 2 photos of the enclosure all put together, the packaging list of all the components, and then just 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to put everything together. Next, I've got the exhaust port on the side of the machine, and there's a fan right behind it. This exhaust port is going to be for 4-inch hosing, and we do have some of that is included with the enclosure. When I pull this really tight, I can get 6 feet out of it. However, when the hose relaxes a little bit, it shrinks down to a more realistic 5 or maybe even 5.5 feet. It's also supplied with a hose clamp, and what's cool about this is it has a little tab for the adjustment here, so this is a toolless hose clamp, making it pretty easy to get the hose connected up to the enclosure. The exhaust fan we just saw has a USB connection to it, and this other white USB connection is for the light inside of the enclosure. We're going to see that in just a couple minutes. Now, to power both of these devices up, the enclosure does include a USB wall power cube. The enclosure already has a bottom panel built into it with zipper access. There's also this additional panel to be placed inside to double up the protection underneath the laser machine. Later on in the video, when I place my machine and accessories inside of the enclosure, we're going to see that I'm not using this panel. When we get to that part of the video, I'll explain why I'm not using this. We've got a couple cool things going on in the front of the enclosure, starting out with the assembly part of it, and there's these Velcro tabs to attach the top. And to make sure that I can see what's going on with my project, there's 5 eye-friendly windows, 2 on the front and then 3 across the top. Like most zippers, we're most interested in what's behind them. I'll get those 2 out of the way, and on this front door, check this out. There's a tab that hangs up. When I move the door down, the zipper on the enclosure, there's a tab that hangs down, making that the perfect light trap so that this enclosure is not relying on just the zipper itself to block all the scatter light inside of the enclosure. Let's check out the left side of the enclosure. Here there's a strip that I can hang any tools or accessories that I'd like to keep very close and handy to the enclosure. And just down below that is this fine screen mesh to allow cross ventilation through the enclosure. On the right side of the machine, there is an access port for cables, this white one again being for the internal light, and that port is also an excellent way to get the power cable ran into the Nano or Nano Pro. And let's check out the interior of my apartment, or this enclosure here, and nice and roomy. The first thing I see though is this nice light, but it's kind of blinding me because I'm looking straight into it just as you are. So in a little bit, I'm going to do this off camera. I'm going to actually move this bar light and I'll move it towards the front and just get it down from the top of the enclosure. And I'll be able to do that because the light does come with two of these brackets. Let's go on a little tour here, and definitely the camera fits inside of this enclosure. There's that light we just saw that's blinding us. I'm going to get that fixed in just a minute. But when I take a look at the ceiling, we've got those three nice skylights. And off towards the left-hand side is that fine screen mesh for that cross ventilation. Over to the right-hand side of the machine to that exhaust fan. And right in the middle is that electrical port to get cords in and out. After that grand tour of the enclosure, it's now time to start moving everything inside. There's going to be two different ways to get this accomplished. The first way is probably the intention of the manufacturer, and that is just quite simply put to take the machine and anything else I need and just place it inside of the enclosure. Pretty obvious, right? The other method, and the method that I'm going to use, is I'm going to set up the machine outside of the enclosure, and once I'm happy with that, I'm actually going to take the enclosure and set it down on top of my machine setup. The two main reasons why I'm doing this is I want to have a nice stable platform to set my Nano Pro on because it is so precise. I want to make sure it's got a nice solid anchor point down to my flat work table here. The other reason is while the floor of the enclosure is very nice, that material, it can get some wrinkles in it, and I don't think that's a really good base to place the machine or the accessories on, even though the enclosure comes with that extra pad that we saw in the beginning of the video. This actually is really nice, it's pretty solid, but I still want something that is totally 100% flat to set the machine on. This is all going to be made possible because the floor of the enclosure is held in place with a zipper that goes around three sides and still connected on that fourth side. With that conveniently set up, all I need to do is lift up the enclosure, get that bottom flap out of the way, and set everything down over the top. Everything's all nice and roomy on the inside. There's plenty of room around the machine. I've got that nice cross ventilation. If I've got any concerns about scatter light coming through that fine mesh, one of the things I like about using this method is I still have this nice folding panel that I can use to place as a V in front of that. So I still have fresh air going inside, but now I block any direct scatter light coming out of the enclosure. I'm still able to use the cord port for the machine power and USB connection. The Rotary setup has plenty of room inside of the enclosure. Thanks again for joining me in this video, and don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to the Laser channel, or ring that notification bell. Not only is it a great way to help the Laser channel grow, it's an awesome way to connect video content like this with other great viewers just like you. Well, until we meet again in the next video, learn, create, and share.